What is going on, guys? My name is Chase, and welcome back to Intelligent Money Investing. And today we have a video I'm really excited about. We're going to be discussing the Warren Buffett position in airlines and Berkshire Hathaway's overall position in airlines. This is going to take us through the entire timeline, all the way from 1994 all the way to the moves they're making just now. So it's going to be a really interesting video, I think, for you guys. And I just want to jump right into this. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. And without further ado, let us just get right into this. So, the first ever move he made with a airline investment. We know that Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett are famous for their airline positions. He owns about 10% of each of the major airlines, like about 6 to 10%. I'm going to be going over those positions at near the end of the video, so definitely make sure to stick around and see the moves he's been making on those, whether he thinks they're a good buy right now. But he owns about 8 to 10% of the major airlines. So basically, he is a major shareholder in those and is extremely bullish in those positions. So it's definitely something to think about. But this takes us all the way back to 1989, where he made a $358 million investment in US Air for big stakes in the country's largest airline in 20. Oh, this is just kind of going over the thing. But he did go and call the industry a death trap for investors back in the day. But really, he is one of the biggest investors in it right now. So it's really interesting. But let's just go right into US Air. And when he's talking about this $358 million investment at the very beginning, him and his partner Charlie Munger were very against it at the start. Well, they were very negative on it because they were missing payments that were due to Berkshire Hathaway and calling it a huge mistake. We'll see how that ends up at the end of his investment as we go through this timeline, but let's start reading through this. So, Berkshire Hathaway's loan to US Air in the form of purchase of preferred stock was almost 5 years old when when Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, told the 1994 shareholders meeting it was a deal that he should not have made. He held out hope, however, that the airline CEO would be able to cut costs in what he acknowledged would be an extraordinarily tough negotiating job. So, essentially, Warren Buffett made a big investment, and US Air was not paying their money back to the shareholders. And Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were obviously not very happy about that. In 1996, that US Air investment did improve. About 2 years later, US Air had a new CEO and a brighter outlook. Uh, it also still had its out-of-line costs. Buffett said at his 1996 shareholder meeting that the investment looked considerably better than it did before, but it was still a mistake that Charlie Munger was giving him a hard time about in this video. I'm definitely going to link this down in the description. I suggest you go through and watch these videos because, especially when you're looking at old Warren Buffett videos, really his philosophy has not changed since the beginning of his career to where what he's talking about now. And it's really interesting to see if you stick with this very basic philosophy that he has, that you can get pretty good for performance in the markets and invest in companies that are going to be strong in the long run. So in 1997, he praises the CEOs for a terrific job. By 1997, the investment was looking even better. Buffett gave credit to Stephen Wolf, the airline CEO, for improving the financial performance and catching up with scheduled dividend payments to Berkshire. So essentially, they had paid them back that money that they were late on to Berkshire Hathaway. So they were starting to make up for their poor performance before. Buffett hoped that Wolf might even be able to nullify his mistake when they were having a hard time. In 1998, he bailed out with no desire to jump back in on the airline stocks. In early 1998, my birth year, actually, with help from a booming stock price, U.S. Airlines paid back its $358 million loan with common shares that were sold for $574 million. Buffett's mistake had also brought in $240 million in dividends. Three months later, Buffett told shareholders Berkshire Hathaway would not rule out making another airline loan, but it wasn't interested in buying the airline's common stock, so a huge mistake by Buffett ended up paying out huge dividends, over 240 million and over about $200 million in capital appreciation. So that's really not too bad of an investment. Over a 200% return in about, what is that? What is that? 9 years? It's not too shabby at all, especially considering that they doubled their money, and it was an investment that they pretty much were writing off as something that might go bankrupt, might go to zero. Instead, they doubled their money, got out, got a ton of money back in dividends, and had a ton of capital appreciation. So now we get to 15 years later, where with reduced competition, this is in 2013, 15 years later, following two bankruptcies and a reverse merger with America West, U.S. Airways was prepping to combine with American Airways, one of a series of mergers that sharply reduced the number of competing carriers. So essentially, this was creating about a duopoly where there was only a few big airlines, which would reduce the competition and increase margins because there was much less competition. That the airlines weren't competing with each other in order to knock each other out of the market. Now, with only 3 or 4 big airlines in the U.S., they're able to raise their prices, raise their margin, and actually make a profit and not be at risk of going bankrupt, as Warren Buffett warned of. At the 2013 shareholders meeting, Buffett was skeptical when asked about the industry's improved profitability. And then in 2017, Berkshire puts billions in with airlines, but Buffett remembers the bankruptcies. Just 3 years later, Berkshire surprised the investment world by taking multi-billion-dollar stakes in American, Delta, United, and Southwest. But at the 2017 shareholder meeting, Buffett didn't sound very enthusiastic about it. So like I said, you guys should definitely go through and watch these videos, kind of see exactly what he has to say. He sounds, when it sounds like in these videos, because I have watched them all, it sounds like he's pretty bearish on these positions, but obviously through his actions, it shows that he's very bullish, moving his positions up to about 10%. And what I should also tell you guys is that 10% is pretty much his limit for when his control in companies that he's not trying to take control of, I believe. He's said multiple times that he doesn't want to go over 10% in any of these companies. So that's just an interesting thing to note, that he's pretty much at his cap and is buying largely as much as he can in a lot of these stocks. So then I want to go through and show you guys the positions that he has in these companies. So the ones that I found here are American, Delta, and Southwest. And as you guys can see, this is a list of Berkshire Hathaway's holdings. I'm going to go ahead and, oh shoot, I just messed that up. All right, we're going back to here. We're looking for, all right, here's Southwest. We got to go back up here and sort by sector. Okay, one moment here, Delta. Okay, so here's American, Delta, and Southwest. So for American Airlines, he owns 4.24% of the company with about $1 billion holding. For Delta, he holds about 8.21% of the company with about a $3 billion holding. And for Southwest, he owns about 8.1% of the company worth about $3.2 billion. So obviously those are astronomically large positions that the average guy cannot afford to be in, but obviously it's also very large for the Berkshire portfolio as well. So this is not an investment he's taking lightly. This is something he's keeping an eye on, and he's made moves as recently as Q3 on these positions. So this is an article of detailing his Q3 moves, and this paragraph kind of details how in Q3 of 2018 he shaved his Southwest Airlines position by about roughly 1%. About 2% of his shares in American Airlines were unloaded, and Berkshire also unloaded 2.6% of his United Continental holdings as well. But obviously, that's not a huge amount. He may have been shaving to free up capital for other positions. He may have been shaving that because he thought it was going to be a little bit overvalued and it's going to buy back in later. But another thing to note is that he really loaded up on Delta stock in the last quarter as well. So this is pretty much a wash in terms of capital in the industry. But it really personifies that Berkshire is very bullish on this position, and what I think this comes down to is that Berkshire is a big investor in companies that it thinks is going to be profitable for a long time, has a big moat, and obviously with this kind of duopoly that has been formed with only a few big airlines that are able to compete in this market because of the high fixed costs of getting into the market and how much money and capital it takes to get in, that Berkshire is pretty set on thinking that these companies are fairly safe and have kind of figured out the formula in order to be profitable in the airlines market. So they're very bullish on these, but I think that they are kind of look at them a little bit like the railroad stocks back in the day that they invested so heavily in. Berkshire outright owns many railroad stocks and railroad companies, and obviously those are more for moving goods, but also are important for moving people. And now that it's moved to airlines, I believe that he might view these as the railroads of the air. But that's just speculation on my behalf. I definitely encourage you guys to do your own research and come up with your own theses, and I'd love to debate you guys about those in the comments down below. So if you enjoyed this video, please slap a like on it, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell to get notified every time I do put a video up on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.